Hey y'all, so happy Tuesday. We're gonna get started here in a second. Having a little bit of internet trouble. Hopefully tonight goes okay because as of right now, I am streaming from my hotspot. So it's unfortunate with all the money that I pay monthly for internet services. Okay, I've been having this problem for the last couple of weeks. I've tried everything. So the techie people out there, if you have any advice, I literally went to get an Xfinity Pi. I've tried the Ethernet cord. I've tried Wi-Fi. Right now we're working off of my hotspot. So hopefully we're gonna try to make that work for tonight. This podcast, Hey Y'all Tuesdays, is now available on Spotify. So if you like to listen on the go, definitely go over there to Spotify and look up that podcast, Hey Y'all Tuesday with RhondaMary. Also, I have on my Unicorns, Fairy Dust, and AR-15s type of girl hoodie tonight. So if you would like to purchase those or buy any of the merch, you can do that at RhondaMary.com. And a special thank you and shout out to my Patreons for supporting my content. And if you would like to become a member of my Patreon, you can also sign up over there at RhondaMary.com. So running a little bit behind schedule, so we are going to go ahead and jump right into tonight. So I want to thank Tangi, first of all, for meeting me over here on such short notice. Earlier, I want to say earlier this week, but I don't know. It was somewhere within the last couple of days. I saw this come across my line on the Shade Room where the MORE Act was recently passed. It deals directly with marijuana decriminalization. And so I thought it only right to have my homegirl over here, Tangi from Tactical Tangerine. I'm going to let her introduce herself here. But not only, okay, is she a super dope pro to a woman, and a gun owner, but she also has worked directly with the cannabis industry. And so I thought it only right to have her on tonight. So Tangi, if you could take your mic off mute and we'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and also let people know where they can find you.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on your show. Super dope. Hello, everyone. My name is Tanjanika. I'm the CEO of Tactical Tangerine Defense, and I have been in the firearms industry for about, I don't know, 2 years now. But before that, I spent the last 10 plus years in the cannabis industry. And the only reason that I transitioned was because I found a letter from the ATF saying that you can't be in cannabis and firearms at the same time. And there was a lot going on in the world, and I felt like my firearms and my 2A rights were more important at the time. So that's how I got here. And so you can find me at Tactical Tangerine on YouTube and not on Instagram. I've definitely been hacked over there, but you
They
can find
snatched
me
the
on
girl
YouTube.
Instagram, y'all.
They got me. They got me. But yeah, I'm definitely heavy on YouTube and I'm heavy on Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok.
You're not on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. I actually am on Twitter. I am.
So do they let you do your thing on TikTok? Because anytime I try to post anything with a firearm, they snatch my page.
Yeah,
And
no, I don't do.
recently,
I have a show on Power 108.9, and I only repurpose my content from there on that. I don't really mess with guns on there either. We're stifled everywhere we go, so it doesn't matter.
it's so true. Let me tell you what Instagram just did. So Instagram is really hating on your girl for the simple fact that I'm under like the paid part. It's not really a partnership, but you can get paid for the content that you post on Instagram, like the reels and stuff like that. So that's what I was doing. Monetize my content. I spend time.
Of
I put
course.
effort. Right, like you do all these different takes, you come up with concepts, you do research, all of these different things, the time and energy that goes into it. Why not monetize it? And so I do that. The very first video where I get actually over 400,000 views now. This is my most viewed video ever. Um, and over 11,000 people have shared this video. And Instagram goes on to remove my monetization right after that. So obviously, you had no problem monetizing my content before, but I'm guessing that it tweaks or alerted some type of algorithm now. And now all of a sudden, you don't want to pay me for the video that reached the most viewers that I ever reached. And these type of things can be very discouraging to content creators, particularly people that put so much time and effort and years and dedication into these things, and to have them snatched away. um and so we are definitely under what I feel to be an attack
Attack.
by tech oligarchs who are like, you know, if you're not talking about what we want you to, if you're not behaving in the way that we want you to, then we want to just, I mean, basically discourage you by all means necessary. So I'm saying that to say, please make sure that y'all support your small content creators. Please support where you can by sharing content, becoming members of Patreon, sharing content with your friends and family, making sure you're subscribed, buying merch and things like this, because sometimes it's the only thing that keeps us going, like, for real, you know.
No, it's bad. It's so bad. And it's just like everything that I want to do, all the cool stuff that I like is so counterculture. Everything cannabis,
Girl,
firearms, it don't matter what I want to do, nothing is acceptable. So this is where we are.
that is so sad. But all right, so let's jump into this tonight. So, like I said, I came across, this particular article on the Shade Room. And I think this legislation was actually introduced. And Tanya, you know better than me, but I think about a year or two ago, and they kind of been like working on it and trying to do this bipartisan thing over time. And so I came across it on social media. Several people were posting it. I came across it specifically on the Shade Room, and I see people celebrating in the Shade Room comments about time, woo, this is what we need, this and the other. And me being a person I am, I always have to go further. Headlines are cool, headlines are catchy, but if you don't know what these people are inking on paper, you just don't know. Like, just plain and simple. And the Shade Room is very low informational. Like, let's just keep it real. And let me be clear about that. The Shade Room, even in its name, it's mostly for like entertainment, drama, and things like this. Where I have the problem is that these platforms will be hyped up as somewhat doing right by people as far as like having a political voice. You know what I mean? They'll halfway cover the stuff that they want to cover, halfway won't. And I feel like where that becomes problematic for us is where you have people that aren't keeping up. You're not going to go read this legislation, not really paying attention, letting things be spoon fed to you. And you'll have people take this and run with it. And I I kind of feel some type of way when you have certain urban media sites that prop themselves up as a voice for the people. And then when we dig into some of these things, I believe them to be absolute agendas against the people that they claim to serve. And so, that's what we're basically going to be talking about with this legislation. I don't know if you have anything to add to
Yeah,
that.
I think that so I had to actually unfollow the Shade Room. I don't even really know what's going on. I just feel like it's so toxic. Like I just got tired of like drama on my page. I got tired of um the misinformation. I got tired of all of it. And so I actually had to unfollow them. And I think of them as Black Lives Matter. They say they're for the, but they're really not. Like I think it's drama filled, and I think that it is entertainment. But I love your clothing line because entertainers are not our leaders. They shouldn't be, but we are the only group of people on this planet that allow these entertainers to represent us at the highest level. And so it's very disheartening to me. And this is what happens. I've seen this time and time again, especially in the cannabis industry. We'll take like 4 sentences out of a whole 1,000-page legislation, and we'll run with those 4 sentences, and that's not what the legislation says. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Girl, see, I follow the Shade Room. This was probably like a year or two ago. I unfollowed them because I felt the same way too. I felt like this is just so much drama. It's
Yeah.
just too much. It's overbearing. And I don't know if something is happening to me psychologically where when you are covering so much news, you are covering so much trending topics, and I think they notice too, but it's kind of like a desensor, y'all know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That happens. You know what I mean? It's like you start to build up this wall. And I used to always wonder why like news anchors, news personalities could do all these stories of, people being murdered and wars and just all type of things and just be able to go on from this one story to the next. And it's like if you start to take on this stuff or let this stuff affect you, you almost can't, especially when it comes to like the whole gun ownership, the 2A thing, because you're gonna have to address tragedy. You're gonna have to address people with mental health issues. You're gonna have to address even because gun ownership, I would say particularly in certain sectors or how it's presented socially, is not always the most popular thing. And so sometimes people take it as, us being like heartless or callous or things like that. And it's not that at all. Ultimately, we want the same things. We want people to be safe. We want people to feel free. We want these things as well. We want our neighborhoods and our communities to be safer. We just think that it's a different way to go about it. We may not agree with the way that you think it should be done. You know what I mean? I don't trust police officers enough to completely 100% just put my life in someone else's hands. And not even just police officers, but I mean, most people. You know what I mean? So, it gets a little tricky kind of doing what we do and knowing how to like move from those one topics to another. But let me go ahead and get this pulled up here. So if you haven't taken a look at the legislation, okay, what is this trying to make me do? Okay, 1 second, y'all.
I think that was such a great point because I think people forget like we're mothers, we're friends, family, we're sisters, we're cousins, we're part of society, we're business owners, we're entrepreneurs, and we're just trying to protect those things. And we know that we are our first line of defense, and so we encourage other people to be that way as well. And I think people think that we just want it to be a free for all. I had a conversation with a legislator yesterday, and we were discussing like Georgia's about to go to constitutional carry, and there's no state that's mandating any type of training. And so those are the type of things like people think that we just want everyone, and we think that this is your inherent right to defend yourself and protect yourself and your family. But at the end of the day, we want everyone to be safe. We want everyone to go home. We want everyone to um be able to grow up or raise their children and their families, and go home to their families. So I think that's a very, very important point that you brought up, because people think we just don't care. And that's the furthest thing from the truth when it comes to our 2A rights.
I've had people affected that I know personally by negligence. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why that's a big thing that I focus on, and it's such a
Mm-hmm.
big deal to me because one was a teenager and one was a child, and me just thinking like those things are so preventable, and
Absolutely.
I know what it feels like to know somebody that's gone through that, and I don't want anybody else to go through that. And us turning a blind eye or pretending like, putting our head and digging a hole, putting our head in, or pretending like we're not living in a real world, that does not keep us safer. It doesn't. It just doesn't. So anyway, it looks like all the odds are against me tonight. So,
That
therefore, it's
happens.
not allowing me to screen share, but that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and read this, what I have to you guys. So, what I find super interesting is that one thing that these people are really good about, and I want to say Democrats in particular, is that they found a way to benefit off of pain points.
Mhm.
They found a way to turn, like, oppression into virtue signaling. Even the way this act is introduced, I'll go ahead and read it to you guys. So this is the Moore Act, okay? And it was introduced by Representative Nadler in New York. And we're going to talk about New York a little bit more later. This is HR 3617. So it says, the Congress finds as follows: the communities that have been most harmed by cannabis prohibition are benefiting the least from legal marijuana marketplace. A legacy of racial and ethnic injustices compounded by the disproportionate collateral consequences of 80 years of cannabis prohibition enforcement now limits participation in the industry. States the DC, Puerto Rico, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands have adopted laws allowing legal access to cannabis, and 15 have adopted laws legalizing cannabis for adult recreational use. A total of 47 states have reformed their laws pertaining cannabis. Legal cannabis sales total, I think this is like 20 billion, and even 40 billion in 2025 will be to reach 40 billion in 2025. According to the ACLU, enforcing cannabis prohibition laws cost taxpayers approximately 3.6 billion a year. People of color have been historically targeted by discriminatory sentences practices resulting in Black men receiving drug sentences that are 13.1% longer than sentences imposed for white men, and Latinos being nearly 6.5 times more likely to receive a federal sentence for cannabis possession than non-Hispanic whites. So this is how the bill is introduced. This is how it starts off. And then you have, like Tangi's point, we'll take those first four sentences and we're like running with them. So you have the shade room. They're decriminalizing marijuana. This is going to be so great for people of color. Um, you know, and don't get me wrong, this bill does have, some good things in it about making sure that we're not discriminating against people that want to start businesses, making sure that we're not discriminating against people for getting loans for starting these businesses, making sure that it was something else that I would think of in a second, right? So, not making sure that people aren't discriminated based on if their records were expunged and if they're currently trying to get a job, right? They can't be held responsible if they withhold that information, believing that they won't get a job. So some of these things are great, right? But then when we go further into the bill and really take a deep dive, you're going to see that this bill, in fact, doesn't remove criminal penalties. And if that's the case, if it doesn't remove criminal penalties, how does it favor the people that historically didn't have the capital to create these businesses or the legitimate businesses in the first place? So this is what it says for criminal penalties. Engaging in business as a cannabis enterprise without filing the application and obtaining the permit where required. If you fail to keep or make any record, return, report, or inventory, or make false or fraudulent record or inventory required by the regulations, if you refuse to pay taxes imposed, if you sell, trade, or transfer cannabis products that are not taxed or subject to be taxed, if you purchase, receive, or possess with intent to redistribute or resell any cannabis product upon which the tax has not been paid or determined in the manner at the time prescribed by this regulation. Now, what are the fines or the penalties associated, you may ask? $10,000 for each offense and 5 years for each offense. Now,
or both.
Or both. This is where I bring my girl Tangy in at, because they just told us, oh, we doing this for the woe is me black man, because the disparities and this and this and that. But then you literally, there's something conflicting happening here, because you are pretending as if you are acting on the behalf of people and using this image, right? We got to stand up for black people, put black people face as the face of this because that is the face of oppression, right? And then we dive into the bill and it's like you still have the same exact federal penalties, if not worse. Tell me what you think about that, Tangy.
Oh, honey. So, there's a lot of things that can be said about this, and I'm trying to figure out where to start because this isn't new. This is something that I've been dealing with for years. And just to give you guys a little bit about my background, I've lobbied in Congress because of this. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I did 2 tours in Iraq. So my introduction to cannabis, my PTSD comes in the form of nightmares. And so it was like for 2 years, I couldn't sleep. I just could not even look at a bed. I had night sweats. It was just, I died in my sleep. And so it wasn't until I found cannabis that I was actually able to get a good night's rest. And so at first, I thought it was like a fluke. I thought it was like some bullshit. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, this ain't real. And so I was afraid to tell anyone. And so for 2 years I was consuming. And then finally I was in a nursing program at Georgia State. I didn't get in the nursing program. So I transferred my credits to film school and I graduated from film school. And I was like, I'm gonna go to Cali for film or I'm gonna go for cannabis. Because I said at the time, like, it's working so well. I don't know why it's working well, but I know it's legal out there and I know I can figure out some things. So went out to California and I went to a conference. And it's called MJ BizCon. This is the largest cannabis conference in the world. And at the time, there were 3,500 people there. Now, when you go, it's like 60,000 people that go there every single year. I was there when it was 3,500 people. So when I sat down in the seat, Cassandra, she's the CEO, she's standing on the podium. She said, the average smoker is a 45-year-old white male. And I started laughing. I was like, she lying. And I look around the room and I noticed that I'm the only black person in my row. And I was like, the fuck is going on here? And then I look around the whole room and there's only 6 black people in the entire room. 3,500 people, 6 black people. We counted, we remember. So I say all that to say I went down this rabbit hole. I didn't know what I didn't know about cannabis. I was like, there's something I don't know about this. And these people are in briefcases, they're in suits and ties, they're all white. And I'm just like, I don't know nobody 45 and white, but I know Pookie back at home. I know Ray Ray them back at home, and they are consuming, they're selling and all that stuff, and they keep getting in trouble for it. So this is a business I find out about. And then from there, I go down this rabbit hole. I find out why it was criminalized. I find out who criminalized it. It was four white men. We can absolutely trace this back and blame them. We know exactly who the four white men are and why they did this. This is all about capitalism at the end of the day. It's the root of it all. And so me traveling around the world, I'm talking about I'm an international public speaker because of cannabis, international best-selling author. I have literally studied this plant. I know how it works in your body. I know why I slept so well. We have something called an endocannabinoid system. We don't have an endo-meth system. We don't have an endo-opioid system. We don't have none of those, but we do have an endocannabinoid system, and that's why it works so well. And so when I start to really do research and I start to, work with investors, I start to work with legislators and help them understand why veterans need access to this, I start to realize why it's illegal. I start to go and down this rabbit hole and realize all the industries that this one plant will disrupt. It will disrupt everything, okay? Instead of taking this one pill with 6 side effects, I'm going to consume this plant and it's going to make my whole body feel better. It's going to change everything in me because the whole purpose of this plant is to bring balance to your body. It's called homeostasis.
And now
So
Pookie, Pookie down the street becomes like your doctor.
he is
You know
your
what I mean?
he is the man in these streets. He's actually the plug, like for real. He's the person you need to go to for all your ailments. And Pookie got the flower, he got the salve, he got the tincture, he got edibles, he got everything you need. So you ain't gotta go nowhere. So when you start to think about that, that's on the marijuana side, and that's cute, right? Marijuana's cute. But when you think about hemp is a $1 billion crop, and hemp and marijuana are cousins basically. And just to make sure everyone's on the same page, the only difference is the THC content. So tetrahydrocannabinol is what gets you the psychoactive effects of this plant, right? And so if you have more than 0.3%, then that's considered marijuana. If you have less than 0.3%, then it's considered hemp. And hemp will change the world. I'm talking about it is a superfood. It's hemp creek. You can build a whole house with it. It's insect proof, fireproof, waterproof, mold proof. Like when you start to, you can paint with it. It's indestructible. When you think about how amazing this plant is, you start to really recognize how diabolical people have been to make sure it's illegal. And when you start to think about how it's illegal and you think about our community, we have 1 million Black men missing from our community because they're locked up behind bars. Violent drug offenses when it comes to this plant because we've always known the truth about it. Jazz players have been using this. So I say all this to say when I read this legislation, the MORE Act has been on the table for at least 4 years. This is not new. This has been around. We've been trying to get this passed, and every time it's a revision after revision after revision.
Why do you think it's just now past the House?
Because there's an incentive. Number one, the Democrats are gonna fucking lose, in no, they're gonna lose.
No, I'm not crazy. My
You're not
suspicions
crazy
are
at all.
not wrong. It's like, oh, midterms coming up. We gotta throw them
No,
the
no, they're
ball. We gotta make it look like
100%
we're doing
gonna lose.
something.
We're sick of them. We are like Biden and came in and tossed things around and messed everything up. He was the worst decision that they ever made. And so they need to get any type of win at this point. And so the MORE Act, and let's be very clear, it passed the House. It still has to pass the Senate. So
Correct.
this is
Which
not,
I don't think is gonna happen. And
it's
what
not.
I actually think is gonna happen is that I don't think this is a strong bill. I think that there are some amendments that could be made that would actually make this bill be the thing that they are pretending that it is and using Black people as a face to do so, right? And so I don't think it's going to pass the Senate. And I think exactly what's going to happen is when it doesn't pass the Senate, and most people not looking directly to hear from the senators about why I voted no on this
Yep.
bill, why I voted yes on this bill. They're just looking for the next headline, right? So the headline you're going to see is X amount of Republican senators vote no on marijuana bill, right? And then they're going to use that as motivation to go in the midterm. See, they don't want to stop. They don't want to stop the decriminalization of marijuana. And the whole time when you actually look into the bill and dig into the bill, you are still criminalized.
You're still losing. You're still losing.
This is a win for the corporations. Like, that's who wins with this. Not only do you want to maintain your prison population, but you also want to continue to benefit and prop up the corporations.
So the top five, the top five people that vote against cannabis and make sure that it's still illegal, the top two were the prison industrial complex and the prison guard union. Like those were the top two. And then you got pharmaceutical companies, then you got alcohol companies. And then, so those are the people that's making sure that this plant stays illegal, again, because it disrupts everything. And just to be very clear, during the pandemic, the top three things that were sold were cannabis, alcohol, and firearms. Those were the top three things sold during the pandemic. Be very clear about that. And
ooh,
so,
they got y'all stressed out, boy. Look, so what does the alcohol industry have against cannabis? I don't understand it.
It's clear competition in any legal state. Every legal state that has legalized cannabis, alcohol consumption has gone down. People would rather consume cannabis than use alcohol. The damaging effects of alcohol, 90,000 people die a year from alcohol consumption. Not one person has died from cannabis consumption. They have cannabis consumption and they might have died from something and cannabis consumption, but specific cannabis consumption, no. So when you think about that, people, think about when you've drunk, like your stomach hurts, you don't feel good the next day, you're not, people don't want to feel like that. Cannabis does not provide any of those negative side effects. And so therefore people would rather consume cannabis than drink alcohol.
This is actually smart on the Democrats' part because you get to pretend that you're progressive. You get to do the virtue signaling. You get to say, hey, black man, look what I'm doing for you. And the whole time you're maintaining your prison population. You're not pissing off the pharmaceutical companies. You know what I mean? You're continuing to uphold the same system that allows the key players to remain the key players. So, hey, I mean, it's smart and
it's evilly brilliant is what I call it. It's evilly brilliant.
And I always question myself, like, you know what I mean? It's like, I be thinking, like, pay attention, think deeper, like, you gotta read what's on the paper. And if people don't want that, if people don't care, who am I to try to force? Maybe it's what the people want. Like, if your ignorance or your turning a blind eye or not paying attention allows the system to be perpetuated, who am I to say otherwise? It's like, I don't know, when are people going to learn?
And I don't think they will. I think people are so comfortable being complacent. They're in their little bubble. Whole time this is affecting us the most, right? So and this is the correlation that I always give. If you get caught with cannabis, then you get some type of prison charge, and then you get the prison charge, you got something on your record, so now you can't have your firearm. So it's this perpetual cycle of us not being able to defend ourselves, not being able to cope with the violence that's being placed on us as a community, and then we're not being able to cope with the medicine of our choice. And this is where it's at. And the only reason I think that this is being thought of now, it's not even just the win for Democrats. Like, white people are dying. Like, they are the fuck dying, and it's bad. And so
like opioids and
yes, opioids, they're at negative birth rate right now. And so they are looking for something. That's why they're eating vegan. That's why they're trying to eat healthy. That's why they're trying to get in nature. They're trying to do more to, it's self-preservation. It's trying to, preserve their lineage. And so now they learned the truth about cannabis. And now little Billy is sick with cancer. And now they know they have a natural remedy, which is cannabis, to help him. And once it did work, now they got a lobby. Now they want to change laws. Or they're son, their nephew, their cousin got arrested for cannabis. And now they're like, oh, who came up with these laws? Like, how is this just? Like, this is not, there's nothing wrong with this plant. And so now they're making initiatives to change things. And that's where you get politicians leaving office, coming into the cannabis industry, making way more than they've ever made before.
Some people would say, well, why not just pass the bill? Why not just, we got to do something, and it's a step in the right direction, and at least it's on the table. And my position on that is that when things are not done right, then you end up with legislation that can potentially or inadvertently cause more damage than good. Also, a lot of times it's harder to reverse bad legislation. You know what I mean? People knew, like how long did we deal with the effects of the crime bill, right? And I can't speak for what was going on at that time, what people were thinking, what the neighborhoods looked like, and living through the crack era. I don't really know. I can't speak for that generation. But what I can say, even at that time and years after, people knew that there were certain parts, like the crack versus cocaine disparities and different things like that were harmful. And so somebody that always sticks out to me is what's his name? Bernie Sanders, right? He's on record saying practically, and of course this is not verbatim, but he's like, I knew the bill was trash. I knew the bill was trash at the time, but because it is one little slither of something that I felt like was going to protect women, I was just like, hey, well, it is what it is. I'll vote for it. And I just don't think that that's the right way to do things, because like I said, it's often much harder trying to get those things reversed or amended as opposed to doing it right in the first place. And if they were all, oh, this affected the black man and whoop the people of color and we got to do this. If it was really about that, we would actually be talking about legalization instead of decriminalization, and you would be leaving it up to the states, right? Because ultimately, I believe even once you have the federal government decriminalize this, if the MORE Act passes, you're still going to have your more conservative leaning states that I just don't think are going to be down for it. Then you have some of those states that are kind of like, middle of the road, and based on what the federal government does, they may be more open to kind of leaning that way. You know what I mean? So these are all things to consider.
No, this is more than to consider. And I can give you a real life example. Like Prop 215 in California is a real example of not changing the legislation, not figuring out the language, and just letting something go through and then regretting it afterwards, which is one of the reasons I got out of it as well. Prop 215 was supposed to be the best legislation. So what the country thinks is, so goes California, so goes the rest of the country. So it was very important for California to try to get legalization right? They have been in the cannabis industry for 19, 20 years before it actually went recreational, or adult use is what we call it. And so the language, the sound bites was that we was going to expunge records. We were going to allow minorities to get licensing so that they can be a part of the legal industry. They were going to, like, it was like 6 sound bites. And we were all, so I was up for it, and then I read the legislation, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is corruption 101. Oh my God, like, no, oh my God, you don't see, like, the governor was in charge of the funds. He was in charge of hiring the people that was over the funds. It was just like corruption 101, right? And so, and it didn't really lay out how Black and brown people specifically, I don't even be talking about minorities, because white women are considered minority. I don't say minority, I say Black and brown people, because those, or Black people, I don't even speak for nobody else. Black people were specifically affected by the war on drugs the most. That's indisputable. And so, um, long story short, legislation passed in California, and it took 3 years for the first Black license to be issued. Like what you had was major companies going in and saying, okay, we'll represent you as a minority, and we'll give you a stipend. We'll give you like 5,000 a month. Whole time they making 245,000 a month on cannabis sales. But they're using this minority license as as the front, and it's always some goofy people that look like us in the front that's spearheading this, because they're getting their piece of it and they've allowed themselves to be bought, and so they've sabotaged the whole program for everyone else. So this is literally what's happening right now, is like you have people excited for this MORE Act. Whole time this is not going to benefit us. Corporate cannabis has taken over, and so
Correct.
now we're kind of late to the game. If you haven't established yourself in major cities right now, you are already behind when it comes to the cannabis industry. And will you get a license? Can you get a license? Can you afford a license? Like, those are all the questions that need to be asked, and no one's in our community is asking them. And so we get the crumbs once again left over, and not being able to benefit from this $1 trillion industry.
It's so crazy to me because it is literally the same blueprint, just wrapped up in all this progressive language. And it's actually offensive.
It
It's
is.
actually offensive that you use this pain point to push the needle forward for your agenda, to line your pockets. It's like, it's offensive. I feel like we're being called stupid
We
almost.
are. What do you mean? We are. We're stupid. Like, we're not saying anything. We're not doing anything. There's no uproar. There's no funds being put together. There's no politician being bought on our behalf. There's no one speaking up specifically. There's no one rewriting the legislation and turning in and saying, like, this is what the language we want to use. No one's doing any of that, and so we are going to continue to be treated like this.
So, child, let me tell you, because that roll us right into the next topic, okay? Talking
Okay.
about midterms. So, this recently came out, and for people just joining us, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Also, make sure you subscribe. And my share screen is not working right now, so I'll make sure to link these articles below. But I know some of you already know because this is going viral today, okay? Black Lives Matter
Mm.
is being ousted a little bit for the $6 million that was recently spent on a Southern California home. Now, if you have been subscribed over here, if you have been a follower of mine, we have deep dive into Black Lives Matter several times, okay? Specifically because this organization has single-handedly been given, handed, propped up to represent a entire community of people. And not only has that been false, but outright practically malicious, okay? I'm just going to call it what it is, the global network. Now, let me preface that if you're new here. If you've been following me for a while, you already know this. But if you're new here, I'm just going to do you the favor of prefacing this, okay? You absolutely had some people that were in the initial stages of their organization and even in local chapters with good, what I believe to be absolutely good intentions. However, you've not only had people taken advantage of, but you've had an entire movement that has been co-opted.
Yep.
Okay. And now turns out in the same time that the people that you would think that would be calling out what is happening in this bill because they've been the most noticeable is now being thrown under the bus. I find it highly ironic.
Suspicious.
I find it suspicious, okay? I find it very suspicious that in the year of midterms, when police brutality has practically disappeared, now it hasn't disappeared if you actually follow people that talk about these issues on a regular basis, not just when it's hot, not just when it's trending, not just when it's Twitter fingers and hashtagging, okay? But if you don't follow any of those people, police brutality has virtually disappeared because Biden ended racism, or
Yeah, he
he
did.
ended police brutality, okay?
Yeah, he
Or
did.
at least that's what they want us to believe, right? So at the same time, you're making us think that you're doing this legislation on the behalf of us. You're not going to have a Black Lives Matter that comes out and says anything, not going to get attention. And now what I believe, they don't want them saying anything. They don't want anybody taking them serious going into midterm. And that may be correct in some ways, right? But I just think it's very ironic. It's very suspicious.
And I mean, it is. I mean, this is, again, this is a part of our stupidity, I believe, because we don't own any media. We don't own anything that can actually benefit us and get the information out to us directly that speaks to us and is mandated just specifically to tell us the truth. And with Black Lives Matter, they're no different to me than the NAACP. They have been taken over. By others that don't look like us. And once you start to infiltrate money from outside of the community, obviously they need funds to run. But once you start to accept funds from outside the community, then those funds come with consequences. People are going to have a say in how you run your organization if they help fund your organization. And that's no different from, again, like the NAACP. And so Black Lives Matter has been bought years ago, and so this organization is no longer, or probably even the original organization. And like you said, to your point, we know people that with boots on the ground who were part of the original organization that lost their lives over this. And so I would never discredit that, but what I will say is that the headquarters or the lead of the organization has never been about the totality of our community anyway. And so they have always been someone I've looked at skeptically. And so it's no surprise to me when I read that article that they bought the $6 million house, what it's for and who gonna live there and what they need. Were the
Make it
questions in
a
my mind.
community house. Make it a community house. Like, you all about socialism, you all about community. This ours now. Like,
Yeah.
what we eat for dinner. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
People, it's cute to speak about these principles. It's another thing to live them and do them in practice and do them in deed. And, you know, as far as the money goes, I don't know specifically any notable thing that Black Lives Matter has done. Now, have there been people that have lobbied for certain legislation and things like that? And does some of that take money? Yes. But all this community talk, and then you go buy a $6 million home in Southern California, not even amongst the people that you pretend to, you know, protest on the behalf of, and all of these other things, is questionable to me and borderline problematic.
It is.
So it's just unfortunate that stuff has had to hit the fan like this. Why I run this point home so hard is because, very similar to the cannabis legislation, I need people to see patterns. I need people to see, because when they try to pull this again in however many years, or however they try to do it, or repackage it and sell this same BS to us again, I need people to pay attention. And that's why I find it so important to run this point home. Not because, well, I don't have like a personal beef with the Black Lives Matter, network or whatever, but I don't like to see people used and manipulated. And something interesting about what you said earlier about going down this rabbit hole. The great thing about going down rabbit holes is you start to learn patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start to see things where you hadn't seen things before. You start to put pieces of puzzles together where you hadn't before. And we need more people doing that. We need more people doing that, because if we don't, just doesn't matter. Black Lives Matter being called to task and people talking about the money, none of that is going to matter if you're just going to let a new name or a new face or whatever come and do the same exact thing to you 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now.
So this is going to continue. I always talk about this, especially when I was in the cannabis industry. I used to speak on panels and like everywhere, cannabis, like all of these places. And I'm just like, at the end of the day, we don't have any economic leverage. We just have to call it what it is. Like we have all the money, but we're consumers and not producers. And this is what's happening in the cannabis industry and in the firearms industry. We are consuming the plant, but we're not producing it. We're not transporting it. And my sole job, I'm a legislative educator. So I've worked with politicians, I've worked with business owners and investors who want to get in that space. But more importantly, I help break down the legislation so you can understand what holes there are and how you can fit in. So I always came up with like, listen, it's got to move from point A to point B. Why don't we dominate transportation? Why don't we dominate logistics? It says in the legislation you have to have a record of and this. Why don't we dominate data? Facebook is just data. YouTube is just data. Why don't we control the data of cannabis? Who uses cannabis more than fuck us? Who? So what I'm saying is we are not in control of we are not in charge of our economic, and we don't have any economic leverage to say you have to do this or we're walking away. You have to fix this or we're walking away. We haven't threatened them enough. And you see what happens when we try to threaten them. We have the ice cubes that come in. We lash down on those people and we like, no, shut up and just vote and get him out. And now we got more trouble on our hands. We never want to rock the boat when we need to toss this bitch over. Like we need to flip it. That's what needs to happen. And I'm so sorry. I curse a lot, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm really working on that. But I'm just frustrated because this will continue to happen. There's nothing new about this. It's the same pattern that's been happening for years. I've been in the cannabis industry 10 years. There were people in the cannabis industry 50 years. Then you got jazz musicians before then. There's continuous prohibition of this one plant for a reason. There's continuous prohibition of us owning our firearms and protecting ourselves, having black men in the home to protect the whole family for a reason. And so once we start to break down all of this, it's deeper than, just the surface level of one piece of legislation. Is all of it.
Correct. The note you made about economic leverage is so important and it's so interesting, right? Because this bill, makes you think that the people that were affected by the crime bill, the people that were affected by the economic and racial disparities can just now start like opening up.
You can just come on in. Come on in.
Like we decriminalized it, you guys. Like you're totally not facing any disparities now. I mean, it's just open for everybody. Like you think the people that were on a corner like selling bags, you know what I mean? Or like, yeah, let me just go open a cannabis business now. It's just not a reality for that same demographic of people that were affected by that legislation. It just doesn't make sense. And when you look into it deeper, you do start to see that this is about the money. It's about the money. And don't get me wrong, people want their money. People got to make their money. But my thing is, don't lie about it. Don't tell me you doing me a favor. You know what I mean? When you're obviously not. And so to me, it's like if those same people that could have got arrested then can literally, if this bill passes, can still get you can still get arrested, because if you are selling, distributing, transporting, and that item has not been taxed, they're coming for you. And of course, you're not going to pay taxes on something that you're selling like that hand to hand because it's not legalized.
Not only that, so we call that the legacy market, right? The legacy market has been around. They're actually the pioneers. We should actually be applauding them. They were right this whole time, but these are the people that we discriminate against. These are the people that we arrest. These are the same people who now have a criminal record who can't enter the legal cannabis industry because they have something on their record. So this bill is supposed to change that. However, I'll give you an example. Georgia, I'm the former chairwoman of the Georgia Cannabis Coalition. So there are 6 licenses in Georgia, 6. And the entry point was 10 million to get in, to get one license. That was an entry level. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so that's not purchasing the land, that's not getting the application approved, and even if you did, the application fee is non-refundable. So you out of 250,000 just to apply. Then you got to have escrow, you got to have the money in the bank, then you got to have zoning, then you have, so when you think of all the fees and how it adds up, it's still not even feasible anyway for the person in the legacy market to get involved. Then you got to have testing, everything has to be tested and approved. Each thing costs to test. You got to test the mold, mildew, make sure it's safe. And the whole time you're lying because you're saying this is a product for patients, right? I'm a veteran. I'm using this for a reason. This is my actual medicine. So you're saying we're doing this for people so that they can get access to their medicine. The whole time you're making it so hard for people to get access to their medicine. It's actually a game. And like when you think of the entire game, so I went to the whole international level with it. I'm trying to figure out like, how did we even get here? And when you trace it back, the United States went around the world. Jamaica used to use this in their medicine, obviously. Caribbean places used to use this for centuries. And then we said this was bad. We said this was, gonna make black men get with white women, and white women was gonna start liking black men, and they was gonna start procreating. We can't have none of that. So we have to make this illegal. And so we went and campaigned around the world to make this illegal. So now when other countries are looking at us, because we got all these states legalizing now, they're like, what is happening? Like, y'all are legalizing. They was like, it's not on the federal level. So don't worry about us. We're not doing it. So it's a game that's being played all the way around. That's why I don't think this is going to pass. We don't have the Senate support that we need to pass this legislation. And it's a game that's being played. Even if it were to pass, between the alcohol and the pharmaceutical companies lobbying, this is not going to go through and come about. So it's just all a game that's being played.
Think about how disrespectful it is to vote on and pass legislation through the House, right? And present it as helping the everyday person, helping the average black man, undoing racial disparities, or injustices that happen, based on, those previous disparities and previous crime bills and things like this. For an industry that has a $10 million entry.
Make it make sense.
It takes $10 million to break into this industry. But you get on the blogs, you get on the TV, and you make the everyday man, the round the way, the down the street, whatever you want to call it, man, the face of this. That is so insulting. Mm-hmm. It's so insulting. It's so crazy to me. And why I find it important to talk about this is because I'm really tired of this. And I want people to take note about how we are constantly being used, right? Our images are being used. We're being told what to support and what not to support. And you not black if you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't vote this way and if you don't stand with this organization. And the whole time, all of these people are out for themselves, right? They want to eat. They want to feed their families. They want to line their pockets. They want to gain millions. They want to buy $6 million homes, right? And they're pretending that they're doing these things on the benefit of us, and it's just not the case. And it's really, really unfortunate. And it's even more unfortunate for people that are not paying attention and will be uh affected by their lack of knowledge.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, it's bad. It's super bad. And this is going to, because all those things that you just mentioned, right, is capitalism. And at the heart of it, there's nothing wrong with those things. The problem is that we don't exercise our right to participate in those things. And
right.
so if we collectively got our $1 trillion spending power together and said we ain't messing with nobody. We just gonna focus on us. Here we go. Talking about let's go save Ukraine. Here we go talking about let's help Afghanistan's. Here we go. Ain't said nothing about the Haitians. Ain't said nothing about, but here we go worried about everyone else when no one's concerned about us. Not one person is concerned about us. This is only being discussed the way it is because this is inevitable. You cannot ignore cannabis. 47 states are legalized. You can't sweep that back under the rug. This is happening. So you might as well be a part of it, and you might as well dominate it. You might as well own it.
This is another reason why we're gun owners as well, because we really not only understand, but we also accept the concept that nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming
Not
to
one
save
person.
you.
Not one.
Most people are out for themselves, focus on themselves, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it may not even be malicious, but most people, your intention is to enrich yourself, save yourself. You know what I mean? And as a gun owner, I can understand human nature. Sometimes people ain't gonna jump in front of a bullet for you. Sometimes people ain't gonna lose to let you get ahead. Sometimes people not gonna share. You know what I mean? And that's just some concepts of human nature that has existed throughout time. And so if you're not working on your own behalf, if you're not trying to save yourself, like who you expecting to do so? And so that's a very good point. Even you bringing up Ukraine, I mean, they are just over the top with the propaganda. So I saw a clip of the president from Ukraine, girl, on the Grammys. I'm like,
not on the Grammys.
you really copping a plea to the American audience. Like, we here for entertainment.
What are we supposed to do?
We're here to
What are
see.
we supposed to do?
We're here to hear a song, okay?
I ain't see that at the Grammys. But let me tell you, I'm just like, this has been labeled the first crypto war. They have sent billions of dollars. They have sold NFTs. They have like supplemented this war through the next level, the next internet phase, which is Web3. And again, we're not paying attention to that neither. We don't know what's happening with that either. And so we're going to be left behind on that as well. And so it's just this perpetual cycle of us being lost, of us not having a clue what's happening because we're trying to save everyone but ourselves. If we just focus, if we got our own, collective NFT collection, if we started doing our own mining of the Web3, if we started doing our own, like creating things that will be sustainable for our culture, because we are the culture. We run everything. We not him on the Grammys. You know what I'm saying? Like, that blows my mind, because I'm just like, how you asking for more money? How are you like, they have sent billions of dollars to him through crypto for a war that ain't got nothing to do with us. $14 billion we sent, United States sent to them. But yet, Black people are asking, just stop killing us. Please just let us get this loan approved. Please let us get this house. Let us have this American dream. And we study asking. We're study asking instead of taking. And that's the problem. And that's what's going to continue. Because, I mean, I was thinking about it. I was like, I would probably treat Black people the same way too. Because, like, why wouldn't I? Like, why? Like, just to be a good person, just to not.
No,
Because, like, why?
no, real talk. On the politician type level, like, a couple years ago when I was first doing YouTube, I used to get like upset and I
Mm-hmm.
used to take it to heart. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
dare you? You know what I mean? You saying you representing us, you saying you representing the people, you get on, you get on Twitter, you get on TV, you this whole social justice warrior, and you really a snake. Like a
Yep.
lot of these people are
To
snakes.
the
You know what
core.
I mean? When I asked, I will never forget, and I bring this up often. I did a question on Twitter, and I told people to name the 3 people in Congress that actually stand up for the Constitution and human rights. Do you know people was naming like 1 to 3 people, maybe 4? That is atrocious.
4 out of
You have
4.
hundreds of
Hundreds.
people,
Hundreds. Hundreds.
hundreds of people that are supposed to be representing us, that took an oath to the Constitution, that are supposed to stand up for our human rights. Like, that is atrocious. And it used to really bother me. I used to get upset. Like, I used to be like in my feelings a little bit. But what you allow continues. You know what I mean? I mean, just point blank, period. What you allow continues. Even for a person like Joe Biden to have the nerve, the gall to
The
say,
audacity.
if you
If you
don't
ain't
vote
black.
for me, you ain't black. Like, he's the arbiter of blackness. Like, how dare us allow people to even get so comfortable, try to flatten our blackness, try to put all black people in a box. All black people are the same. Black people are a monolith. You know, had the nerve to say something similar to in another meeting, sitting right in front of some supposed black leaders, right? I think these were people from like the NAACP and the Black Congressional Caucus, and have the nerve to say, but Hispanics, they're different or some, basically trying to imply that all black people are and think the same. And I'm like, at some point, when is this not a battered relationship that the battered woman keeps returning, knowing she's being disrespected, knowing how she's been treated? And look, I can mention it to you, sis. You got the support you need. Like, it's better options out here. Like, we'll help you. But I'm not standing in the way of where nobody want to be. I can't do it. I can't do it. You know what I mean? And they say that it takes a woman so many times. I don't know the exact amount of times. It takes her so many times to leave her abuser. Maybe this is some type of cycle that we're in, and we just have not accepted or made ourselves ready to leave our abuser. And abusers gonna do what they do. They just gonna keep getting the benefits of what they get out of abusing you.
And that's it, and that's all. And that's how, I mean, like, what else are they supposed to do? This is their role. And I feel like we were bullied, like the level of bullying that happened last election was
Girl,
atrocious. Like, it was, you were actually, and one of my family members like almost tried to disown me because I said I wasn't gonna vote at all. Like, I was like, do you hear yourself? Like, pick the lesser of two evils. Isn't it still evil? Like, what are you actually saying to me? And the fact that they could try to justify it blew my mind. And so now everybody's quiet as a church mouse. I'm
Tangy,
like, I don't hear you at all,
Tangy,
sis. Where are you? What's
Tangy,
happening now? As the country is literally in flames, as we are literally
Tangy.
going up in smoke right now, this is happening. And I think this is what we get. Like, I'm here for this. I am here for all of it. I was here for Trump. I was here for Biden. I'm here for it all because the fact that you keep believing that these two groups are going to save us and give a damn about us at all, even a little bit, is mind boggling to me. And the fact that we still trust and believe and still think and talking about our ancestors and how they would have. And I was like, my ancestors wouldn't have put up with this. My ancestors knew what time it was. They knew where the money was. They knew how to hurt people. And y'all don't. Y'all have zero self-control, zero discipline. And this is where we are.
Tangy, when I tell you these people so quiet, you had everything to say during election time.
Ooh.
Whoop de whoop. I mean, you had all the names, pull them out the bag. We was this, we wasn't that. We don't want things to change. Girl, I had so much stuff said to me that I literally had to like detox after that whole election cycle. You know, I had to detox. I had to let a lot of people make it and
Mm-hmm.
just say stuff and go on
Mm-hmm.
with stuff that I knew wasn't true. And now when I say, you hit it right on the head, that these people are quiet as a church mouse. And when I tell you, I have lost respect for
Yep.
so many people that I know personally, that I know you are leading people astray, that
Mm.
I know when you have the resources, the mentality, and the capability to be more honest and genuine and truthful with people, but you won't do it because you're more committed to a bag and you got the nerve to think you better than the system that you be talking about. Girl, don't get me started. No, I'm telling you, Tangi,
Mm-hmm.
I have lost. It's like I'm disgusted. I'm
Literally.
disgusted by these shade room lights that,
Mm.
like, you could do better. You can be better, man. You have the ability to reach people and give people something different. And the fact that people want to like repeat the same things that they complain about. It's like, I cannot take y'all serious. I cannot take y'all serious. And girl, these people quiet about
I ain't
these
said a
gas
word.
prices. They ain't said a word. You got more homelessness. You got girl, right in I was reading this today. Mayor Mayor Eric Adams, right up there in NYC, girl. He's creating this new police task force. When I say they getting these homeless people out of these streets, they got these people walking these subways. And don't get me wrong, we obviously want crime to be addressed, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want crime to be addressed. We want people to feel safe. What we don't want is people human and constitutional rights being trampled on. And we also don't want people being profiled and lumped into situations that they don't have anything to do with. That's what we don't want. But when I say that mayor is whipping these people into shape, he's bringing back police task force that were known for like killing people, and not a word has been said. Not a word has
Stop
been
and
said.
frisk.
People
Like
don't even
stop and frisk
know.
was illegal. And people, like, their rights were being violated. This is us not knowing that we're not reading. We're just looking at fine print, right? And so stop and frisk was illegal, but yet cops were still doing it. They are like kidnapping people at this point. And like, we not even asking questions about where they're taking them, what's happening to them. Nothing is being addressed at any type of level. So now it's very interesting that cannabis is legalized allegedly in New York, because New York has the worst laws when it comes to everything. When it comes to everything, everything. And so
I'm
I just am baffled as to how we got here. But again, you only treat people the way you allow them to. And so you don't see Asians having these same complaints. You don't see Jews having these same complaints. You don't see any of the others having these same, because the level of ramifications that will come from messing with them are so high. I was even thinking about, like, even when remember when that Asian was drug off that plane and how the stock dropped? Like, it's immediate action. Like, you gotta have, and it's nothing. Like, you gotta hit them where it hurts. And we don't ever do that. We still go to H&M. We still shop at Gucci. We still do stupid shit. So I mean, here we are. Here we are.
For the record, I just want to, for anybody that missed this, I want to say this again. While Joe Biden is president and New York City has a black mayor, okay, they are reinforcing the same task force, the same tactics that were used and people were complaining about in the 90s. That is currently happening, and absolutely nobody is saying anything about it. And you know why I'm saying something about it? Is because that's what I do. I don't just care, or I don't just talk about something when I'm propped up, when it's hashtag time, when everybody's Twitter fingers and everything is trending, because that's actually the easiest and more cowardliest thing to do. And it's also the easiest time to be manipulated and used, because you're just being puppeteered. When they're ready for you to talk about something, you talk about it. When they're ready for you to care, you care. Whereas I think we should take a holistic and a realistic approach to these issues, where we have to maintain and we have to create uh, the foundation for safe communities, while also making sure that people are maintaining their constitutional rights, maintaining their human rights, and making sure that those things are being maintained equally across the board for everyone. So, girl, it's just a hot mess out here. And like you said, nobody's talking about it. Everybody's quiet. And it really got me looking at people different. It really got me looking upside people's head. And not necessarily, yeah, it got me looking upside people's head, because I can't respect people that are controlled to that extent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, the only time you talk or care about something is when somebody has to tell you to talk or care about it. Just says to me that you don't actually care. Even when I look at the people who put all this Ukraine in their bios, these Ukraine flags, this, that, and the other, they going on. And I'm like, all these conflicts around the world, all the times that the United States has been the bully, the United States has been on the other end, and even what they're doing now with their propaganda and picking and choosing, right, the winners and the losers and these
Mm-hmm.
other things. And it's like nothing is said. Nothing is said when the bombs are being dropped on the brown countries, right? On the black countries, when it's the sanctions and all these other things. But now all of a sudden the media tells me, oh, you need to care. And now I'm just supposed to what?
Care.
And I'm not, and I'm like, don't get me wrong. I am anti-war as much as, I completely believe in non-aggression principles. I'm not about hurting people. I'm not about taking their stuff, point blank, period. And I feel like a lot of geopolitics is just an extension of what we seeing happening, just like what we see with this cannabis bill. You have people telling us it's one thing, but really, whether it's to protect your assets, whether it's to gain more assets, right? Whether it's to steal from some of these smaller countries, or basically like twist their arm into doing the things that you want them to do. Those are some of the things we see happening, and those are things that I'm not okay with. And obviously we don't want people losing their lives unnecessarily, or at least that's not something that I want to see. However, when you looking on a global scale, that's not the only conflict that's happening. That's not the only conflict that's happened, in the last couple years. And the least we could do is try to somewhat be consistent on these issues.
So I mean, you summed it up beautifully, but I don't care. I'm on a whole different level than you. I'm minding my business that has nothing to do with me. The Haitians in Texas on our soil has something to do with me because they look like me. So you mean to tell me we kidnapped them? We still don't know where they at. But you got enough. You got 14 billion to send. And even if we didn't talk about the Haitians, even during the pandemic, we ran out of masks. We ran out of ventilators. We ran out of hospital beds. We were at capacity. We have not updated our infrastructure. Our country is going to shit in a handbasket, and we got the audacity to send 14 billion to someone who couldn't send a quarter back to us, not even 25 cents if we got into some mess. What can Ukraine do for us? That's literally how we have to think. And there are casualties in war. Take it from somebody who's actually been. There is casualties in war. And if you're going to do it, do it. But that ain't got nothing to do with us. Who's going to help us if something pops? And I've traveled the world. People don't like Americans. I don't know what your audience knows or not, but we're not the favorite around the world. So for us to put on our cape and stay trying to help someone else, whole time we are in distress here.
Do you think
Distress.
do you think it's because they see us as bullies? Do you think it's because they see us as arrogant? Like, what has been your
Both,
experience?
all of the above, all of the above. We ain't like we act like our shit don't stink whole time. During COVID, everyone saw when our skirt was up, our shit wasn't right. Like we didn't have any of the things that we say we need. Whole time we talking about other third world countries like they ain't nothing. Meanwhile, Africa, the continent, has the lowest rate. You know what I'm saying? And we over here dying, like looking crazy. Don't have none of the things that we need. We don't have our health care is abysmal. Okay. We don't even have the things. We have more homeless vets than anything. And this is the conversations that we need to be having, but we're not. We're worried about other people in other countries. And this is why people don't like us because we're so arrogant, we're so cocky, and we are bullies. Whole time we are in no position to be any of those things.
Well, girl, I don't know what to add to that. Before we get out of here, do you have any final words? And also want to tell people where to find you.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just to bring it home, the corporate cannabis is a thing, and um, I never want to encourage it, but I do want us to pay attention if we've ever. Um, I don't think this opportunity, I know this opportunity won't come around for another 200 years. And I know we have NFTs and we have crypto and we have the next reiteration of the internet. But when it comes to this plant actually belongs to us. It belongs to the people. It belongs to everyday people. And this plant is amazing. I'm not telling you something I'm guessing about. I'm not telling you something I heard. I'm talking about as an actual person who was a patient who understands how it works in my body, who studied this like on a scientific level, the biology of it and how it's changed lives, veterans' lives, how they're better husbands and wives and spouses and entrepreneurs and better members of society, how it helps with stress and how it helps with everything. But not only that, how it's going to revolutionize the world when we really allow it to do what it's going to do, hemp especially. I can't encourage you enough to get involved. I can't encourage you enough to Google. I can't encourage you enough to read up on this and figure out what's happening right underneath your feet. Don't worry about state and federal and all that stuff. What's happening in your city, in your county, in your town, start there and then work your way out and see how you can get involved. And you don't have to touch the plant. I grew up Jehovah's Witness. I grew up cheerleader. I was not about that life. So it wasn't until I found out all the lies that were told about this plant, that's when I really got involved. But there are ways that you can get involved in this $1 trillion industry without touching that plant. So I encourage you to do so. And I'm always available for consultation if you need any help with that. But Tactical Tangerine is where I am now. I truly believe in our 2A rights, and that's what I'm currently fighting for. So if you want to, talk to me, I'm Tangy at tacticaltangerine.com, Tangy. Tacticaltangerine.com is my website, and YouTube. I always upload every Thursday.
And so I want to say, because I think you made a good point about people not touching the plant. Something I've said is, I people are gonna always try to make you what they think you are, and so I often tell people I wouldn't. I'm not gonna call myself like some advocate for cannabis or marijuana or some educator or anything like that. But what I do know that I am is I'm absolutely an advocate for your freedom, your
Period.
human rights, your constitutional rights. And I do not believe that it is okay for the state to kidnap you. Okay. I do not think it's okay for them to kidnap you and put you behind bars for partaking in this plan, particularly one that has shown to have such benefits that you can find research and study on. So I feel like the information is there, and I'm definitely not going to think that it should ever be left up to the federal government. I absolutely believe that it is something that should be left up to the states, and people
Yeah.
that live where they live should be able to decide instead of using this one size fits all, type of legislation. And so for that reason, I think that it's important that we talk about this. And then secondly, when you put, you know, the image of Black people as a face of something, and we're being told that this represents us, and the whole time it is in fact uh, not benefiting us, if not actually hurting us. I find that very extremely problematic, and I find it something very important for us to talk about. And so I will continue to do so, and that's why I found this topic very important for tonight. We don't want to be thinking that something represents us or even our neighbor for that matter, and the entire time is really just something to benefit the pockets and line the pockets of, politicians. And so with that being said, if this is your first time watching, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Please share this content. If you like to listen to podcasts, this podcast will now also be available on Spotify. So check me out there. If you would like to purchase any merch like the Unicorn Spirit does, an AR-15s type of girl hoodie that I have on tonight, or support my Patreon, you can do so at RhondaMary.com. Also, make sure you follow me at Instagram, Rhonda_Mary, where I post way more than I've been posting here recently. But thank you for coming on, Tangi. And I will hopefully keep y'all updated on what's going on, let you know if any amendments are made to this bill that actually makes it better and makes it be the thing that they're pretending that it is. I know Thomas Massey is one senator that has introduced some amendments to this that can make it a little bit, stronger and better. And so we'll see what happens over time, but I'll definitely keep y'all updated on that. All right, y'all. Bye.
Bye.